Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rachak, Wadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And what we're seeing here is definitely the workings of a great civil divide that's looking to eventually lead into straight chaos and violence. Right now, this is from ZeroHedge.com. As the headline reads, "The View post declares violence against ICE agents is part of a justified reckoning," quote unquote. And just want to mention here, as always, you got to look, further ahead, right? The scriptures talk about that. The prudent man looketh well into his goings. And I think there's another one that mentions he foreseeth the evil and hideth himself. So what that means is you don't just look at the now. You don't just look at, the main event that's happening, but you have to think ahead, right? What are the ripple effects of this? How does this affect anything else downstream? Because sometimes it's really those downstream impacts that are more destructive. So when you see something like this, right, you may say, well, who gives a damn what she says, right, or what she has to say? The reason why I'm highlighting this is because it's a mindset. So this is just a visual example of how one of many people are thinking now. Okay, and in addition to that, there are certain things that sometimes people will think, or sometimes they won't think it in their minds. They might not even be thinking about it, but hearing somebody openly say it or hearing news about it starts to form, thoughts in their minds. All right. And that's how you start to, garner more and more people thinking a certain kind of way, right? They see somebody else do it, then they're more likely to oh, well, hey, she ain't wrong. Because usually what happens is somebody mentions something, right? And there's going to be people that agree and there's going to be people that disagree. And sometimes, if you've ever noticed, it may be something you might not care about, but you find yourself so deeply involved simply because of how much opposition came against it that you're just like, I didn't really care about this topic. I do agree with what was said, but there's so much opposition. Now you feel inclined to prove why, what was said wasn't as bad, or defend statements, or whatever the case is, right? So the point is here, she is just one of many, right, that are voicing this. And the more people come out and say this, the more it becomes real. And the more it becomes real, the faster you slip down the slope of violence. So this is, so it says here, Sunny Hostin of ABC's Infernal Women's Gossip show turned TBS Rage Fest. The View intimated Friday that it is excusable for deranged leftists to violently attack ICE agents. Now, what's also interesting here is how now, right, as prophecy is taking that center stage, people who, like, even some of these TV shows, some people who are now like voicing their opinion, you're starting to see them in a setting that you don't usually see them in, right? Whether it's basketball players, whether it's TV show hosts that typically talk about something, or the theme of what they discuss is either comedy or sports or something like that, and yet now they're talking about it. That's basically what happens as prophecy unfolds. It becomes center stage. Now, during the CV, it was like that, right? Everybody everywhere was talking about it. They stopped, even TV shows, themed the whole CV in there. So that's the thing about prophecies. You can't escape it. Anyway, let's see what else we have here. So it says, in another frothing rant, Hostin appeared to be proclaiming that because ICE agents were wearing masks during raids to arrest illegal aliens, it's somehow justifiable to attack them. Now, there's also a lot of information and disinformation and misinformation that's coming out now. So you have to be careful what you see and what you believe. But things are getting pretty crazy out here, right? Even yesterday, I saw a post where apparently there was a teddy bear that was found covered in human skin. You know, looked like human skin, like was sewed on it, which is wild if you think about what it would take to create something like that. Anyway, and it's only getting worse, right? It's only getting worse. Like you're seeing, this is literally what you're seeing in broad daylight. You have, you know, agents that are going, rounding people up. They're literally going through different states, different cities, stopping people that look suspicious. If cars have a lot of people in there, you know, your car is packed with people, and they look like Northern Kingdom, chances are you're getting stopped, right? And then they're questioning them, you know. It says here, if you mask yourself because you don't want to be seen, there will be a reckoning for some of the actions law enforcement have done, Halston declared. Sonny Halston brushes off left-wing violent attacks on federal agents, says a, quote, reckoning is coming. Okay, let's take a look.
CBP officials in McAllen, Texas. Several people were injured. The perpetrator was actually neutralized, but that's also something we don't want to see, is an uptick in violence against law enforcement who are doing their jobs. So if you have a problem with this, talk to your lawmaker. That's the place to do it.
If they would do their jobs the way that I think they should be doing their jobs, which is unmasked without disappearing people from the streets, I don't think that the public would feel as endangered. Because if someone approaches my loved one who's undocumented with a mask, how do I know that they're actual law enforcement? How do I know that they work for ICE? So that's one thing I'll say.
There's actually people who have impersonated ICE officers.
But do they show an ID? They don't show IDs. They're not dressed appropriately. They're not flagged, and they're masked. And so, in my world, if you mask yourself because you don't want to be seen, because there will be a reckoning for some of the actions that actual law enforcement have done.
So you heard the claps, right? So eventually, you know, it's going to get real interesting, all right, to say the least, real interesting. And one thing that I thought about too, and I think I mentioned this before, which was similar to the movie The First Purge, where it was a social experiment. They wanted to get people into that violent state. And people just weren't doing it, no matter what they did to provoke them. So what did they resort to? They ended up resorting to sending in mercenaries, right? Now, when you look at some of the, you know, it's not just like regular people. Yeah, you have like migrant families that come in, right? Children, women, men that are not like, they're not criminals. But you also have people in like gang members and, you know, people who are like in drug cartels and so on that are in. And it would be much more difficult for the Trump administration to run a campaign and say, we are trying to get illegal immigrants out of the country, and the target are helpless women and their children, right? If they ran a campaign like that, people would be like, that's kind of, I mean, damn, that's a bit harsh. It's a bit too much. But if they ran it on the drug dealers, the criminals, the cartels that are in the country, you now can show footage of certain crimes, right? You now can justify why you have to like do what you got to do to make the streets safer. Because if your target were, once again, children and women and people who are just seeking a better life, how is that going to make the streets safer? But if you paint them as the face of crime, the face of terror, declare them a terrorist organization, you can use that to say, well, we have a case here. We have an operation. We need to get these dangerous people off the streets. And why make an exception for anybody that is, you know, an illegal immigrant, as they put it, right? So by that whole Biden era, it basically laid down the groundwork and the justification to be able to come in a draconian fashion, because you've created your boogeyman through an orchestration of different events and scenarios. So it says here, hold on, and in The First Purge, that movie, that the mercenaries coming in was able to trigger people to fight back, you know, have to like, you know, shoot back and all of that, and eventually lead into that annual customary purge situation, right? Anyway, says here, hold on, masks are bad again now. If masks are so bad, then why do almost all the protesters wear them? So now you have, once again, right, you have opposing sides, different opinions. It's difficult to keep up with their deranged mind garble. Does this same logic apply to those rioters and Antifa members that are masked? As we highlighted yesterday during a raid on a marijuana farm manned by illegal aliens and illegal alien children, yes, really, a protester near Camarillo pulled a gun on ICE agents. Now, what's interesting here is, it says this came following an attempted ambush on ICE in Texas by leftist terrorists. You hear the terminology? What they've done is they've done a very good job of demonizing the label, right? When you think of terrorists, you're not thinking of anything good at all. So when they start using these labels, what it does is psychologically, it dehumanizes whoever this label is put upon. Once they label somebody a terrorist, you're not looking at them as like a person. You're not looking at them as somebody who is being framed or somebody who is not as bad. You're looking at them as whatever the label terrorist means. And that's, in your mind, it's more so danger. It's all the things that they've attributed to that label. So now it's easier to do or take certain actions against them because you're not looking at them as just somebody regular, like the slaves, right? When you hear, like, at least if you go back during the time period of heavy, hardcore slavery, when an Edomite heard slave, they didn't think human. They thought property. They thought, like today you hear dog. They thought that's how that label was. So whenever you heard slave, oh, you were a slave, oh, then they look at you different. Why? Because their brain processes that different. It's not, oh, you look like a human being. No. So that's the power of categorization and labeling. And when they start to throw these terms out here, it desensitizes the minds, and it once again leads the world down a steeper slope towards that violent end. So it says here, in Texas, by leftist terrorists intending to murder the agents. Interesting. Far left extremists are praising the shooting terrorist attack on the ICE facility in Alvarado, Texas, and Alvarado, Texas, and are encouraging others to carry out similar attacks. You hear that? So if you now have situations like this, and as these operations become more and more, it becomes more mainstream, it becomes the main thing everybody's talking about, you're going to have cases like this where it's going to start with, like, indirectly people in high positions that are of the opposing side signaling to others, as it says in 2 Ezra 15, there shall be sedition among men. They're going to be signaling to the people, hey, you got to fight back. Well, what does that mean? How do you fight back? And indirectly, they're going to be saying, do basically what these guys did. And then eventually it's going to become more and more common to where now they don't need to hide it. They don't need to say it indirectly. It says here, somebody fired a shot at an ICE officer in Alvarado, Texas. Cop was treated and released. Nothing serious. Several people arrested. These are the 10 alleged members of a North Texas Antifa terror cell accused of carrying out the attempted murder of federal officers at a shooting T attack on an ICE facility on the 4th of July in Texas. One local police was shot in the neck. So this is like a targeted operation. Now, whether they were set up or whether they were people that just organically just felt this way, hey, it doesn't matter as much because it still plays into the narrative. What's the narrative? Enough violence justifies more draconian and harsher measures. Wow, she is calling for more violence. Unreal. Notice how she brushed aside the violence against ICE. Didn't warrant an acknowledgement. These women are vile, borderline treasonous. Pay attention to the terminologies they use. See what else we got here. Yep, imagine the screech parade if federal agents start to take more direct action against thieves and criminals threatening their lives. Once again, it's just obvious. Okay. And yeah, so, and Yahushua did mention this, right? Now I'm going to jump straight to the point. This is Matthew 24:6, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, which we've been hearing about, right? More prevalent now than ever. See then, or see that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So other things still have to happen before those rumors of wars become the ultimate destruction. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the what? Beginning of sorrows. So what we're seeing are signs of what? The beginning of sorrows. And those sorrows are going to be that time of Jacob's trouble. Jumping down to verse 12, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. The word iniquity goes into without rule, anarchy. Okay? And that's where you have your chaos. So that's what's happening. This country is descending into that. And once again, with the right cause to provoke the people, to trigger enough violence, they will be justified to bring that state of emergency and that warlike law, which is commonly known as martial law. Anyway, with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying and informative to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Recha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.